So let's quickly cover the different ways we can use list properties to control the appearance of our ordered and unordered lists. So list elements display certain browser styles by default. Unordered lists typically display a bullet or solid dot, and ordered lists usually display a number. So that's what they're currently displaying in our design. But we can change the list markers using the list style type property. So with list style type, we can add any type of list marker to either ordered or unordered lists. So back in our style sheet, let's scroll down and add a new rule that targets our unordered list. So right beneath the image rule, let's select our unordered list on the page by typing UL, and let's give it the list style type property. And as the list style type value, let's try a value of square. So let's save our style sheet, and when we refresh the page, there we're able to see the new square markers in our unordered list. The list style type property can accept values ranging from disk, circle, or square to other values like lower Roman, lower Greek, and lots more. You can actually see all the values in the MDN doc for list style type. And if we're not feeling any of the list style type values, or if we simply need to turn them off, we can always set the list style type value to none, which, as we can see, turns the list markers off. They're now gone in our unordered list. But in our design, we're going to go ahead and keep the default disk list style. Now, the same applies to our ordered lists. So let's target the OL element in our page by changing the UL to OL. And let's add the list style type property once again. And this time, we're going to make the value decimal leading 0. So when we add the decimal leading 0 value, notice how it adds a 0 before each number in our ordered list. So next, we're also able to set whether or not we want the list markers to appear inside or outside a div element. So for instance, let's go back to our style sheet and let's remove this OL rule. And let's target all list items on the page with the LI selector. And if we give every list item a border style, so let's say 1 pixel solid black, when we save our style sheet and refresh the page, notice that by default, the browser displays the list markers outside the list items. They sit to the left of the text and they appear outside the content flow. But we're also able to change the position of the list style with the list style property. So let's go back to our style sheet, and now let's target both lists. So above the LI selector, let's target the UL element, and let's also target the OL element. And in the rule, we're going to add the list style position property. And when we add the value inside, and take a look at our layout once again, so now our list markers are inside the content flow of our lists. So lists, by default, are indented into the page with left padding, as we're seeing here. Now, if we want to change or remove that indented space so that our list items are left aligned with the content, we can set a list's left padding style to 0. So to remove the default indentation, let's go back to our style sheet, and in our UL and OL rule, let's add a padding left property and set the value to 0. And when we do that, notice how the content in our list is now left aligned with the rest of the content. Now, keep in mind that older versions of IE control list indentation using a left margin instead of left padding. So just in case, let's go back to our UL and OL rule, and let's include a margin left value of 0. And we also want to keep the list style position outside, so let's go ahead and remove this list style position declaration. And finally, let's go down to our LI rule, And let's increase the vertical gaps between the list items. And we can do that with a bottom margin. So let's remove this example border style, and we're going to replace it with a margin bottom property. And let's set the margin bottom value to 10 pixels. So when we save and refresh the page, that looks much better. Now remember, list markers appear outside the content flow by default. So now that we set it back to the default of outside, that's why they're over here to the left margin, or sort of outdented. So that's completely normal. So finally, let's give both lists a top and bottom margin to give them a little more separation from the content above and below. And I'm also kind of liking that default left indentation. So let's go back and remove the padding left 0 declaration. By all means, keep it in your layout if you like it. And let's change the margin left property to the shorthand margin property. And this time we're going to set the top and bottom margin to 30 pixels and the left and right margins to 0. All right, so let's take a look. I think this looks much better. Let's go ahead and stick with that.